if I blame God for what a person did, that's actually robbing the person of answering for their own decisions. Like, God didn't do that to me. That man did that to me.
Today, we explore the complexities of personal pain and offer practical tools and insights to help you cope, heal, maybe even thrive. We're even going to ask some really tough questions about God's involvement in our pain. But here's our warning. Today gets real. We're going to talk about things like sexual abuse, miscarriages, divorce, people that have hurt us. But it's a safe place, I promise, where we can have these conversations that lead to hope and maybe purpose in our pain. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Live Change podcast. My name is Chad, and I'm joined by Joanna and Jason. And this podcast is all about how we as Christians live out our life change. Today, we're talking about finding purpose in pain. But before we jump right into that, we're going to talk about painful situations that were on the outside. We're going to tell some stories about what is the most painful thing that you've ever had happen to you, like physically, like, you know, Like, what is the most physical pain you've ever experienced?
Well, I weighed 11 pounds, 13 ounces when I was born. So I know the most painful thing my mom has experienced. That's true.
It took us 36 seconds to land in childbirth, just so we're clear.
Yes, we get it. Childbirth is the
it's
queen
the trump card.
of
The Trump,
all
yeah.
Guys, I wasn't even going to choose that. And when we were prepping, they were like, we know where you're going.
No, I'm giving a shout out to my mom.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm honoring my mom.
You
Then she had twins after me.
Are you serious?
Yes.
So, like, every Mother's Day, do you just like
I thank her. And on my birthday.
you were the size of like a small like dog, like like a toddler.
He was the size of a baby.
That's not a baby.
A big baby.
That is a giant baby.
I've got in my baby book, by the you know, like your moms keep the whatever. I saw this, I don't know, 2 years ago. I saw it at my mom's house or whatever, my mom and dad's house. And Jenny was reading through it. And I just hear her go, "Oh my word." And I was like, "What?" And she goes, "You were eating meat at 9 months old." I was like, "Let me see it." And like in the diary part, it was like eight hamburger today or something like that. And it's like 9 months. Yeah.
I love that you came out of the womb like ready to ride a razor scooter.
Oh, hey, Mom. What's for dinner?
Oh, my goodness.
I have another painful thing.
Yeah, back to painful stories.
Tell me a painful story.
When I was in college, I played basketball. And we were down in Florida playing in a tournament. And it was like the playoffs. So it was a really important game. And I was running in for a rebound. Okay, so we took the shot. No. The other team took. This is all doesn't matter. None of these details matter. Sorry,
You're just bragging at this point.
I'm on defense. Okay, they take the shot, but I'm like at the 3-point line, so I want to get out ahead on a break. Okay, so I start sprinting as fast as I can. I put my head down. I take 3 steps, sprinting full speed down the court. Well, another guy on the other team was going in for the offensive rebound. And he's sprinting full speed into get the rebound, and we never saw each other. And his face collided with my face, basically head. And all I know is I never saw it coming. So I took 3 steps and then I just see black, and I just start doing this, and then I sit down, and I sat down for probably 4 seconds, and I was just like this, and my jersey it's just soaked in blood.
No.
It gashed. Do y'all see that?
Yeah.
Do you see that for real?
Yes, I see it.
I do actually.
Okay. That was wide open.
Oh.
If you're listening right now, I'm pointing to my forehead. If you can't see us on YouTube, I'm pointing to my forehead. It was wide open.
Ugh.
Okay, check this out. The dude who hit me, it was his teeth. That's what did it. It was his teeth. 3 days later, I know someone who went to that school, whatever. His teeth fell out. They turned black. They literally turned black.
Yeah.
And fell out.
That's how hard he bit your forehead.
Well, sort of. So I feel like I won.
Yeah.
I got out of that deal.
Like long term. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Did it get infected?
It got real bad infected. You should have smelled it.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm
Gosh,
sorry.
come on.
I'm sorry. I'm telling the truth. I'm telling. It smelled like a cheese and
come on.
burnt hair.
Wow. But as a guy, it's like, oh, that's terrible. Kind of wanted to smell it.
I have never seen the color that came out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About like a week later, the color.
Yeah.
Like a neon green.
See, but now
ooze.
you
It's
are
terrible.
a product of your scars. So
Yeah.
that's a scar you always think back.
I'm trying to get really gross to see how bad I can gross you out. But all that's true, actually. Like, I mean, it really did. It was nasty. It smelled
You should have said
horrible.
if you're driving and you have a weak stomach, you might want to pull over because now we have people just passing out listening to
There's like a trigger warning.
yeah.
Joanna, what's
Beat that, Joanna.
And
I won't.
well, you could.
So
You could
it's
just
funny.
be like, I have 2 children.
No. So I was talking to Finn about this last night, actually, because I was
Finn
like,
is
my son. Yeah, he's 7. He'll be 8 in just a couple months, actually. And so I was like, dude, I got to tell a story about like a time like I got hurt or, like a gruesome story or whatever. So you know what he tells me? He goes, Mom, you should tell them about the time you fell down the steps a couple weeks ago.
oh. What happened?
And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, like you just really slipped on your socks and just kind of ate it for the last couple of steps. He's like, it really hurt. You cried a lot.
Did he say
And
you
I was
ate it?
like, yeah. I mean, yeah. And I was
Wait,
like,
is this
okay.
all true?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
yes, it is all
All right.
true. But it was just so funny to me how so quickly he recalled, like, sure, that was gruesome, but also really embarrassing, dude. Thanks for like just recalculating or like recalling all of my.
There's nothing worse than falling. It's not like you tripped on something. You just fell. Like,
Right. Yeah. I
on
was
your own
just,
2 feet.
Yes. I was just minding my own
Well-
business, walking down the steps in socks.
Well, that's
and-
easy.
Yeah. So anyway,
How many stairs?
it was probably like the last 4 or 5.
Wait
And
till
you
you're
skidded?
in your 40s and 50s.
Oh.
You'll throw out a shoulder. I get when you do that. Or you
Well,
do
so
something.
the story I really came prepared to tell is so actually after I had Junia, our second,
Mhm.
Okay.
I had, like you guys know, like your organs, well, you wouldn't personally know, but your organs get all crazy, your
I've
stomach
heard.
gets big, your like abs can separate. So I
Oh.
had like a significant ab separation,
Oh my!
which
What does that mean? I don't know what that means.
So like imagine doing like
I mean,
a,
do I?
well,
maybe I
imagine
don't
doing
need
like
to.
a crunch now.
Yes.
Okay.
Like
I've
your
done this.
abs like would be like knit together, right?
Okay,
Yes.
right.
So then when you have a child, like your stomach
In the
expands.
middle?
So your abs
Oh.
can separate.
Oh,
This is like something out of Aliens.
No, stop. See, this is why I didn't want to talk about this kind of stuff with you guys.
Oh my
So
gosh.
then anyway, I had what was like a several finger
Props.
separation, like in my abs. I didn't
Props.
know it. So long
Mothers.
story short, I picked up something that was way too heavy and ended up throwing out my lower back because like your core isn't
Oh, yeah, yeah,
stable
yeah.
enough. So then, if your core is not stable, your back's not stable. So anyway, I ended
Man,
up
well
like throwing
done.
my back out, which was
This is-
terrible.
Well,
it
I'm
was
sorry to
worse
hear
than
that.
childbirth, to be
What
honest.
was
yeah,
the
your back, yeah.
was the back injury worse than the ab injury?
Yeah, because that you don't really know that you
Oh,
have.
really?
Like, you know what I
Okay.
mean? Because
Well,
everything's
it sounds
just
horribly
stretching.
painful, but you're saying it's not.
I think
Yeah.
women are just more tolerant of pain. I'm just going to say it.
Could be.
I guarantee you that if my abs separated, I would not tell you, it didn't really hurt. I would
But
talk
that was,
about
like,
it every
slow
day.
over time. Like, it was 9 months that you like get
Oh,
rounder and
okay,
rounder
I thought
and
it
rounder.
happened in the birthing process.
Oh,
no, no, no.
okay,
It's
okay.
like just because you're like expanding.
Oh, I see.
Like, yeah. So then
Still.
anyway, yeah, I threw my
Still, the
back
point
out.
remains.
That was terrible.
You win.
Okay.
I don't. I don't.
Well,
I'd rather
I
have my
beg to
forehead
differ.
busted.
I have a story. So mine's embarrassing. And Steph goes, "Are you going to share the painful story or the embarrassing story?" I was like, "Well, both are painful, and one is embarrassing." I was getting ready for bed, and I had to change out of my pants, and I got my finger caught in my belt loop as I was taking my pants off, and it ripped the tendon in my finger. So
Oh my gosh,
so-
this is the best.
when I lifted up my hand, and if you're watching online, you can see all of a sudden my finger was just bent.
It's like you're doing a gang sign.
It totally was. And then I would do this, and it would stay.
Like,
Okay.
And
try
then
to
I
make
would
it
do
straight.
this, and then it lost its elasticity. So the tendon inside,
Like
and I was,
it's like a rubber band or something.
yeah,
inside
and it
of
was
there?
like I broke the rubber band, and so I told Steph, I was like, I think I hurt myself, and so I had to go to
What did
urgent
you do?
care. I went to urgent care, and there at urgent care is easily.
What did you write down on the form for intake?
I hurt myself. And there's the doctor. She looks like she's in high school. I think her name was like Dr. McKenna. And she goes, how'd you hurt your finger? I was like, well, Dr. McKenna, I took off my pants and I got my finger stuck in the belt loop. And she goes, but seriously, how did you hurt your finger? And I go,
I got it.
I was like, no, that's how it is. And she goes, oh, you were serious? I was like, yeah, I was serious.
I
And
just
so-
love that you had to come to work the next day and it looked like such massive trauma had happened to your hand, and then you had to tell everyone why.
What
Yeah.
was it wrapped up in a cast? And
Oh
stuff?
yeah, like I literally had to repair. I had to go to like OT. It was.
How
it
do
was-
y'all feel about seeing doctors that are younger than you? I struggle with it.
I do. For this particular one, she looked so young that I thought to myself, or is it like bring your daughter to work day? But no, she was just a bright doctor, and I think everyone's starting to look younger to me because I'm getting old.
That's definitely something I have to get over now. The older I've gotten, but
Yeah.
I used to wrestle with it because I'm like, I think I know more than them. I think
Yeah.
they're younger than me.
Well, it did not surprise me to know she did know more than I did.
Well, I'm always proven wrong on that, but
Yeah.
Everyone now, it's getting to the point where everyone looks younger than me.
Yeah.
So, but today we're going to keep talking about pain, but a different kind of pain. We're going to talk about emotional pain more or less. We're going to talk about emotional pain. We might dabble in talking about some physical pain, but we're going to talk about the kind of emotional pain that we all kind of go throughout life. Some people will drink deeply from the well of pain. Other people will only sip from it, but everyone's going to experience pain at some
I
point.
just visually imagine just like a well.
And
And it's like, some of you might just take up a little bucket.
And
Some of you might fall in.
that's a great way to put it. Some of you fell into the well of pain, and for those of you, I hope and pray that we'll do this topic justice. My question is, would you say not addressing emotional pain is denial or fortitude? Like, because there is someone listening out there. There's a guy that's gone through some emotional pain, and he's like, it's not a big deal, and he's like, he thinks it's fortitude,
right.
but what would you say?
I would say this is the difference between wounds and scars. So everything that happens to you that is a negative sort of experience don't judge, don't weigh them on scales. It's just a negative experience. That is a wound in some way, shape, or form. So not making the team hurts still, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
The ability though for you, here's the thing, that can become and stay a wound, or that hurt can stay a wound if you don't have a safe place in which to acknowledge, I'm sad about that. That really crushed me. And it might just be that. That's all you need to do. And you got someone who forms an attachment in that moment and says, yeah, that really, I know how hard you worked. That might be all you need to have your hurt acknowledged and that wound now to become a scar.
Mhm.
And the
Yeah.
scar is good. You can live with scars. Like this scar on my forehead, I'm not experiencing any pain from this anymore. Because why? Because I let it, I
acknowledged it.
I acknowledged it and let it breathe. Like I let it breathe. You have to, like, if I covered it up, if I still had a bandage over it, it actually would have it wouldn't have healed as fast. Right.
Well, and that's like the movie Inside Out, if you guys remember, where sadness started touching all of the happy core memories.
Yeah. Yes.
And
yes,
so she was like freaking out because she's like, oh my gosh, you're going to make all these core memories sad.
Uh-huh.
And so what she was doing is acknowledging that there's a ton of happy that happened,
Yeah.
but also then you moved away from your friends. And yeah, you're right. That is
Yep.
sad.
Yep.
And so I think sometimes, and maybe this is where I was going a minute ago, where it's like, sometimes it's even just how it's acknowledged, how someone like notices, oh yeah, you were hurt.
Yep.
And
That
so, yeah,
can help
maybe
it
that's
heal.
more what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
So
that
let's
can help it heal. I've
Yeah.
never, ever almost lost it weeping in a theater like I did it
Oh.
Inside Out. It was very embarrassing.
Yeah,
It was so embarrassing.
if you
That could have
haven't
been-
with my
seen
kids.
That could have been your injury.
Oh,
it'll mess you up. It'll mess you up. So, but what do you say to the person that has been living in denial? Like, so they had something traumatic happen. They had a loss.
Okay. So Chad, take this example. This is where I was going to go with it earlier.
Yeah.
So if you don't acknowledge and have a safe place you can acknowledge, again, let's take this getting cut from the team because it almost seems like actually it's probably an experience that we all relate to in some way, shape, or form. If you can't acknowledge that, if you're not safe to acknowledge, hey, that really stunk, and do that, here's how it stays with you. The wound stays with you. Of course, you're going to be like, oh, that's in the past. I don't do that. But what you don't know is like, so I'm not going after that promotion this time.
Yeah.
Like you don't even know how it's affecting you because you got cut before. So you take a little bit of edge off. You don't risk anymore. You don't do something anymore. You don't try because that feeling that you really never got to feel and own or whatever, that stays with you in a sense. And so it's like you make up your mind like we don't take risk. Because I remember when I tried out and I got cut.
Well,
that's it living with you because it's like it never got a chance to become a scar.
Well, then give me some other examples of this. Like, so if it's someone that's lost someone or someone that has actually experienced trauma, someone abused them, someone hurt them, or they lived through something traumatic. Like, how do we acknowledge those kind of things?
Well, what do you mean? How do we acknowledge them?
I think there's people out there that have experienced
true
injury,
big T stuff.
Like
big T.
This isn't going to be a scar. This is going to get infected.
It can become a scar.
Yeah, this is going to affect the rest of your life. It's going to come out in different ways. It's going to.
You're asking how does it go from a wound to a scar?
Yeah. How does it go to let's step away from the analogy for a second and just go, those that have experienced painful trauma or painful loss or painful chronic illness, how do we challenge them, those people that are listening here, that they're driving in the car and they're saying, I have not acknowledged the pain. I've had fortitude. I've just, picked myself up and would you say that's wise? Or do you say that there's some value in acknowledging the pain?
The injury, like it's truly like a thing?
Yeah.
I think that, no, I think it lives, I don't think that's possible to just ignore the things that have brought injuries in our life. Like you can ignore it. I don't think you can live that way. There's something I was going to say related to that. But anyways, I don't think that's possible. I think the way that you bring it, time does not heal all wounds. That's a misnomer. You can be just as wounded 40 years later. I know guys who experience sexual abuse as a child or rejection or whatever, and their marriage, like it's 25 years later, and their marriage is completely affected by it. So it's not time that heals wounds. It's the willingness to say it happened and it hurt. It's to take the Band-Aid off, to say this, or the covering off, and to say this happened and it hurt. That starts there. So usually with people.
So because I think
if it's truly an injury.
Well, I think yes, and that's what we're talking about. From this point forward, we're just talking about the hurt, the pain of life that are non-healable on their own, the emotional pain. And so, like, here's what, like, for me, my perspective is, if you don't deal with emotional pain, that divorce, that betrayal, that trauma, that hurt or illness or whatever it is, if you don't deal with it, it's going to come out. It's like pressure. I feel like it's like too much pressure, and eventually it will escape emotionally somewhere else. And I think that's why we have to acknowledge it. But identifying the source of pain. So people listening might be able to identify the source. They might acknowledge, okay, I was hurt growing up, but they have never gone through the process of identifying who or what hurt them. So my question is, how can past experiences contribute to current emotional pain? how, or like maybe it's like how can family dynamics and upbringing contribute to emotional pain? Like how can the past dictate today? And so Jason, you started getting in
because we are you saying how does it work?
Yeah, like how does it happen?
Because we're hardwired for survival. And so we will do what we need to do to survive. And that means you learn coping mechanisms whenever you've gone through something painful, and traumatic or really kind of, painful stuff. You learn how to. So, okay, I'll give you a good example. So I dated someone this is not me. I'm giving you an example.
Yeah.
So I dated someone for a while. I thought we were going to get married. I found out they were cheating on me. We ended up, the thing broke apart. After 4 weeks before our wedding date or whatever. Okay. That you weren't intended to go through that. Like that's injury in a way that's like, your trust was broken, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You will make decisions on how to not experience that again. Like you're going to naturally want to survive that. No one wants to feel these things.
Yes.
And so what you might do is the way you may cope with that is you might say, cool, I don't trust people.
Wow.
I let people get this close and not going to feel that again, not going to risk that again. And again, none of this is conscious. It's not like you're sitting there writing down, I will never, I guess maybe some people do. You just know it.
So,
you just don't do it. It's intuitive to survive.
So if you have a young woman who was hurt by a boyfriend, and that left emotional scars, her trust for future relationships is greatly diminished, or could be if she doesn't process it in healthy ways and acknowledge the pain.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting too, because I think, let's think about anything we've experienced as a child. So my parents were divorced. I was probably 8 or 9. And so then in light of that has spilled into obviously dating relationships. But then also just the beginning years of our marriage. And some of that, I didn't even know that that's what I was communicating. That it was actually it was 8-year-old Joanna just trying to protect herself, as 20-year-old Joanna, now being a grown up, not realizing that 8-year-old Joanna was still dictating that. And so it's interesting. I think it was probably this time last year, we had a couple come in. Their name is Jimmy and Irene Rollins. We can link them in the show notes. They have a lot of just great content around even this topic. And one of the things that they shared was just such a good mental picture that I don't know, really struck a chord even with Kevin and I, that it was hey, sometimes when I react that way, can you do me a favor and see me as the 8-year-old who's really struggling, because it's an 8-year-old Joanna who's hurt, not and it's coming out in a 30-something Joanna that's hurt.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really powerful word picture that then Kevin's not holding me, or it's not it turns it from a frustration that Kevin's feeling, that
empathy.
It's it's because, right. Yes,
Yep.
That's great. It's because it's oh, well, you were hurt this way.
Yes,
I didn't know
Joanna
that.
is not shutting me out. That 8-year-old girl is.
Yeah.
And it is not just the child metaphor. So I don't want people to be I wasn't hurt as a kid. It's going back to whenever that hurt was.
So whatever the thing that brought about the feeling of pain in your life or whatever it is, we will cope. We gotta, that's just human nature.
There is some man out there that is yelling at his kids that he's not yelling at his kids. The emotion that's coming out is not at the kids spilling the milk or doing something. He's yelling at his dad. He's emotionally yelling at his dad. Or there's a woman that's yelling at her second husband because she was hurt by her first husband, and she's that emotion.
Well, how many times does that happen in marriages where you got tension between you? I mean, I can't tell you how many times with Jenny and I, it's all almost always my thing. It's my issue, and I've got tension, and I won't deal with it, and I'm impatient with the kids, and the kids just get the wake of all of it because I won't deal with it. That's the thing, man. Is when you don't. That's what we're trying to say. I think some of what we're trying to say is when you don't deal with these things, you will leak. It's like you're carrying around a bucket, and it will leak onto other people. You will spill if you don't deal with what's in that bucket, it will spill out. It'll spill out in some way, shape, or form.
So it's literally about, so the first part is just naming who, what.
It happened.
It's acknowledging
and it hurt.
pain. So first thing we said is you got to acknowledge I'm hurt. I have been hurt in the past. I have pain. Like, that's okay. It's okay. That doesn't make you a victim. It just means that you have experienced pain. And then the second thing is to name, like what happened, what hurt you.
Well, name it happened and it hurt. What was it? And then the second thing is, and what story and what coping and what did I do to not feel that? What did I start to do in my life to not address, to basically survive?
Yeah. Acknowledge.
Oh, I stopped trusting people. Oh, I decided I'll never do this or that. I decided this or that. I talk to people, so many people at our church, and it breaks my heart, whose, again, I'll go back to the marriage stuff, whose marriages today are affected by things that happened to them years ago before they were ever married. And I always try to encourage them to say, the way, and now they've shut their spouse out, or now they won't be vulnerable with their spouse. It has nothing to do with their spouse. It's because that's how they learn to survive. And I always feel just such compassion because, and what I'll say to people a lot is, look, you came by this behavior honest. In fact, you had to. This was a good thing. You had to build resilience by shutting down. That's how you got through the abuse. That's how you got through the whatever it might be. The problem is all those skills you learned to survive are no longer needed, but you think they are. And so now you're shutting out your spouse who's done nothing to you, but it's just how you learned. And so you came by, I just always feel empathy because I'm like, you came by it honest. That's how you learned to deal.
So,
but now everybody else is suffering as a result of it. And sadly, that's the tragic irony of it.
So if people, they've found coping mechanisms, they've created unhealthy ways of expressing their emotions, whether they just exploded out or they've developed coping mechanisms for them, we have to acknowledge that there is healthy ways to express our emotions. Mm-hmm. And I'm imploring everyone, and it's important. It's important to don't be a hero, express, what happened, express your emotions and have a healthy way of venting those, because if you don't express your emotions, they're going to come out elsewhere. So what are some healthy ways to express your emotions about what has hurt or what the emotional pain that you've gone through?
Yeah. So I think, just for me personally, some of the ways I do that is I'll journal. I'll talk to trusted people. I think talking to folks who have gone through something similar when you're ready. Or I think even sometimes saying I don't know what to do. This is what I'm experiencing. So I think, there's different ways, kind of maybe depending on how you're wired.
I love that you said talking to other people that have similar stories. Mm-hmm. I don't know why, but I resonate with that really deeply because when I'm hurting, I want someone to understand. Mm-hmm. And I as good intended some people are, there's something very cathartic about being like, you too.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think too, knowing that it's not a once and done, I think is important too. So even you journal about it one time, that doesn't mean it's you're going to get it all out. So I think also just giving yourself a ton of grace, as you're working through that. It's funny. I can think back to a couple of moments, even in the, in processing our 2 miscarriages. And so the one in particular, I remember being here on a Sunday, just attending church with our family. And so we had Finn at that point, and then we were going through, well, I guess it had been a little bit since we had actually lost our second. And I remember coming to church and just for whatever reason, something triggered that we had lost a child. And so I just remember instantly needing to rush to the bathroom because I knew I was just going to break down. Right. And so I had someone that I called and was just hey, I know you're probably here. I'm literally crying in the bathroom. Can you come talk me off? I don't know what to do with all of this. And she was amazing. She is amazing. And she just was yep, I'll be there. Give me 5 minutes. I'm going to jump out of the gathering. What bathroom are you in? And so, I mean, just then for the next 45 minutes, like we just talked and prayed, and she just used language around how can we honor like what's happened, but how can we heal from it? How can we kind of go from that wound to scar? And just left space to say like, tell me more, like get it all out. Like you're safe here. And so I think like, yes, you can do a lot of processing on your own. But also when you're ready, like I think it's important to have some of those folks that can walk alongside you too.
It reminds me of like sometimes like my own kiddos, like when there's an injury, there's this fear of they don't want to reveal it. You know, when little kids get hurt and they're like they hide it, like and they're like I don't want to show you my cut, my boo-boo.
It's mostly because they were doing something mischievous to earn that injury, I feel like.
There is a very good chance of that. But they don't want to they don't want to show, and it's like, but you have to show me because when you show me, when we like look at it, we can deal with it. We can start the healing process with it. But as long as you hide it, you don't get to heal. And I love what you said there. So what are some creative outlets? What are some more creative outlets for people that are experiencing pain? Jace, like what for those that are like, I'm not a journaler, because I find you're either a rabid journaler or you are like, I don't want to write anything down. And people that are maybe not ready, what are some other ways that you can express your emotions in healthy ways?
Well, I mean, it's very hard for me to understand even what I'm feeling. I'm not real in tune with my emotions a lot of times. And so one of the things that's helpful sometimes for me is like, there's these, have you guys seen those wheels?
Yeah.
They look like
it's like a feelings wheel.
Feelings wheel. Thank you. And we have some of those in my house, like a little magnet that we use with the kids on it. But honestly, sometimes I'll look at that. I was like, I don't really know what I feel, but I usually feel something real deeply. And, but it's so out there. I don't know how to articulate it. And that also feels real vulnerable for me. So, that's a helpful tool for me sometimes to go, oh, it's that. Like it looks like anger, but if I kind of go a little bit, it's actually, I'm afraid of this right now. Or I'm feeling anxious about this thing. So anyways, those, you can find those online, I'm sure anywhere. But those can be helpful. Sometimes it's talking to a trusted friend. Sometimes it's bigger than that. Like, because now you've actually began to, it's bigger than that. So you need to talk to someone who's trained in counseling. And so, I mean, like it kind of all, what's the level and what can you not move past? Again, it's like the difference between a hurt and injury. And it's like, I couldn't heal a broken arm by myself. I would need a doctor to help with that. So it's just thinking like, what's the level of, I can't move past this. And then that might determine the level of resources you're going to need to surround yourself with. But Paul talks about this in Galatians, where he talks about carrying each other's burdens and in this way fulfill the law of Christ. And we tend to think about that from carry each other's burdens. Like I need to be there for other people, which is true. Like that's definitely an aspect, but there's an implicit other side to that coin in that passage in Galatians, which is the church is a place where you allow your burdens to be carried. You allow those things to be made known. So what you did, Joanna, in that bathroom that day was so honoring to God and the way you moved towards healing, because you essentially said, I need someone to help carry this burden. So imagine, and that breaks my heart. I think about people who carry such painful things by themselves. And that's just really heartbreaking to think about. I mean, imagine, like, it's heartbreaking to think about you in that bathroom by yourself, alone, crying. As opposed to then having someone right by you and encouraging you and speaking to you. But I've been there, and we've probably, all of us have been there at some point where we're suffering alone.
Yeah. And I think sometimes too, and I know I said maybe a couple of times, like to talk to someone else when you're ready. Like I know in those seasons, like let's not discredit being able to just tell God whatever was on my heart. Yeah. And so actually I did bring a couple from that season, just for my own personal like prayer. So when I think about journaling, for me, it's actually more typically just like prayer focused, because sometimes it's helpful for me to get my thoughts out that way. And so,
Wow,
I mean,
I can't believe you brought this. Like, thank you.
yeah, like I don't know. I just when we were talking about this topic, it was just like
Yeah.
actually I could probably give you a couple sentences of just like real raw
Mm.
thoughts. And so, I mean, so this was before we even knew. And so, hey, I come to you scared, God, unsure, hopeful, mourning, not sure if I should be mourning. The thought of losing a child was something I just didn't think would happen to us. And even as I write this, I'm just not sure what will happen. I'm not sure what your plan is. But God, just asking you for strength for this teeny tiny life, and that you would be with us through the decisions that we might have to make. And so not knowing, we didn't even know the outcome then, but I knew that God was safe. Like I knew that he was proven. I knew that he had walked with us through things before, and I knew that he'd walk through this. And so then I think just like, when we found out that it wasn't a viable pregnancy, I could have just shut God out. Like I could have decided to process it by myself. And even just probably forced myself not to. And so just, I mean, yeah, then kind of just going to God, just keep my heart focused on you and your plan. I praise you for the moments of peace, but I also praise you in the moments that are still really hard and when I don't understand. God, let me forgive myself. This was not my fault. I couldn't have done anything to change it, and I couldn't have stopped it. But God, I know that you're holding me close. And God, I know that your comfort will be good. And then just like weeks later, just continuing to still process, like God just keeps showing me and teaching me why. Like I think so many times, like we walk through so much of this like hard stuff and we don't know why. And it might be years and years and years until we know why. But I could also tell you, I have some very clear moments over the last several years that like I know exactly why I walked through this. It's because 1 in 4 women deal with this kind of thing. And I've met those women, and I'm now able to share that part of our story. Like really in a way that it's like, yeah, we've walked that, and it might not be the same. And it's not. But it's just enough like relatability that it's like, okay, God, like if that's why. And so anyway, I think like, yeah, being able to know that I can also like go to my Heavenly Father and say, hey, this is where I'm at. God, just keep leading me. And was really good in that season.
You know, Joanna, like one, thank you. Like, that's what I love about this podcast is it helps people understand that one, this is real. And two, being in ministry, we're not immune to any of the things, any of the feelings. But I am going to acknowledge something. Is like as I listened, I'm so thankful that Joanna, in the lowest moment for you, in the most pain, you were able to cling to God. But there is some people out there that are struggling with God right now. They are wrestling with God right now because they are saying like, one, I'm not going to cling to you. I blame you. And so first, I just want to ask, like, you know, do we have permission? Are we safe to express our emotions to God? Is he going to get angry? Is God, is it a sign of disrespect or lack of faith if we don't get to where Joanna got to, but we're just like, I didn't get there and I'm angry. And do we have permission to talk to God about these things?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Psalms, everything you were reading, Joanna, just there, just thought those are modern day Psalms. Those are, the Psalms. So for those of maybe newer to the Bible, the Psalms is a collection of essentially prayers, sort of written in poetic form, right in the middle of the Bible. If you take a Bible and open up the middle, you're probably going to land in Psalms. And they're beautiful and they're heart-wrenching and they're honest and they're inspiring and uplifting all at the same time. And they're written. One of the Psalms 88 says, "Darkness is my closest friend." Pretty real. That's a person who was probably in the throes of depression. And they're praying this. They're saying, God, where are you? Darkness is my closest friend.
Wow.
You have why consistently through the Psalms. Why, God? Why, my God, why have you forsaken me? That's Psalm 22. You have all sorts of, God, my enemies are Psalm 3. My enemies surrounded me, slap them in the face.
Oh, wow.
That's a prayer. It's like, because sometimes that's how we feel.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to get that out. See, sometimes you got to get that stuff out. And once you get it out, you go, all right, God.
Yeah.
You love them more than, but if you kind of keep it bottled up, it's just there, always simmering.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. I mean, so even in those like moments where I was writing this stuff down, like I didn't have the benefit of being able to read the last prayer, like when I wrote the first one. So like even when I wrote the first prayer, I didn't know how it was going to end. And so like there's a lot of stuff in the margins that is just all of those moments. I mean, like between our two kids, it's about 5 years. So like I just read that so swiftly. So I also just want to like hold space for like to what you're sharing, Chad. There is a lot that happens in the waiting. There's a lot of emotions. I was probably feeling every feeling on that feelings wheel in a span of 5 years. I remember when we got pregnant with Junia, our fourth, like literally telling God, like, if you take this one away from me, like, I don't think we could do this anymore. Like, and so like, I think being able to bring all of those, to be able to just bring it all.
Well, it's so silly. I mean, God already knows.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what's kind of silly about it in a sense. But the healing comes when we acknowledge it again.
Yeah.
It's kind of like confession. You know, when we confess, it's like, why does God need us to confess our sins if He knows our? And it's because there's something that happens when we agree, when we acknowledge, when it begins to align our hearts with God's.
And for me, Jason, like I think that as pastors, there's this desire to answer for God. There's this desire to, let me excuse God. You know, let me give you an excuse over why this happened. And I don't think God needs us to be his rep in times of pain and tragedy. Because there's sometimes as a pastor where I've looked at families that have lost a young child, and I go, I don't know, I don't understand. And so like I bring to you the question of like, people are asking, like, if God is so good, why did this happen?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, you should be, I don't know. I mean, like, you should be real careful probably ever trying to answer why anything in that sense, because everything's going to fall short. The most important thing I'm sure that friend did for you that day, Joanna, was just hug you and be with you and remind you it's going to be okay. And that's all she needed to do more than anything else. There's a time to speak truth into someone's life and to remind them. Sometimes it's in the middle of it.
And I think too, sometimes to even say, hey, it might not be okay, but I'm here.
Yeah.
Like, so I think even being able to say like, hey, you're right. It still might be terrible. Like you still might be sitting here for a while, but hey, I'm here. You're not doing it alone.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I just always go back at the center of our story as Christians is a God who did not tell us to get over pain and tell us to get through it, but a God who entered into our world and experienced the depth of of pain. Like we honestly, I'm not sure we'll ever understand, to go through a crucifixion with the weight of the world's sin on your shoulders, to be spit on and mocked and beaten as the only one who's ever, like to give himself in that way. I had someone email me recently and they said that they lost a child at 35 weeks due to a cord issue in the womb. And it was obviously one of the hardest things. But there was something at the end of her line email that struck me. And she said, and it's been a little bit of time, so there's been some healing. She can say this now. But she said, it struck me recently, who better to trust my own son with than the one who gave his son for me? And that was, I think, her way of articulating what I'm trying to say is like at the center of our story is a God who has experienced the deepest of suffering alongside of us. And some people are like, well, that doesn't help me in mine. I understand. I get it. But we're not alone. And sometimes I don't know why. The other thing to be careful about, and especially, so I've gone through my crud, and people who are part of our church know this. Sexual abuse is a part of my story. Happened to me from 9 to 14 by a guy in our church, where I was living at the time in North Carolina. Yeah, there's something interesting that happened when I was going through, when it all came out into the open. I started seeing a counselor immediately to talk about it. I mean, like no one knew for 5 years. I mean, it was an unbearable burden to carry that secret. And then finally everyone, or felt like everybody knew. But everybody knows, and now you're talking about it. Now I'm going to talk to a counselor. But anyways, he asked me something at one point that I thought was interesting. He said, "Where was Jesus when all that was happening?" And he wanted me literally to kind of imaginatively kind of go back into the room that it happened a lot. It's like, where was Jesus? And I just had this sense. I was like, oh, he's in the corner weeping. And my point is, I always had a sense that if I blamed God for what a person did, that's actually robbing the person of answering for their own decisions. Like, God didn't do that to me. That man did that to me. And if I place the responsibility on God, I just always felt this, I'm actually softening it for the guy who did it. And N.T. Wright, he's a theologian, he says, the real question isn't how could God let some of these horrible things happen in our world. The real question is, how could we? Because we have the ability so often. He's like, we don't want to face our sin, the sinfulness of humanity. So we conveniently project that onto God and go, you could have. And see, that's a kind of a tricky line, because if I want God to stop the person who did that to me, then I have to know, where do you draw the line for how much control you want God to have over your life? Like, I don't want to be a robot. Well, here's the risk. That means people can make horrible decisions.
Yeah.
That's the risk of love that God decided to love. Love can only exist in freedom, or else it's not love. It's coercion. And this is the great gamble, is in the freedom that God gave us to love him, we also have the equal capacity to do incredible evil to each other within that freedom. And some people listening right now, you've suffered at the hands of incredible evil.
Wow. And it's hard to come out of that with something to say, but like I'm going to try. I think you answered the question I was going to ask, Jace. I was going to ask God, where are you when things hurt? And I think you articulated the fact that God doesn't leave us when things hurt. He doesn't ignore them when things hurt. Our God is there in the midst of when things hurt. And he's there before, during, and after. And
our Savior suffers with us. And again, I realize, look, would I have preferred that none of that happened to me? Would Joanna, would you have preferred that? Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, that doesn't change any of that. Here's what I know on the other side of it. 2 Corinthians 1, starting in verse 3. Paul talks about this. He writes this letter and he talks about this incredible moment of suffering and pain that he experienced when he was in the city of Ephesus. And he starts that by saying, all praise to God, to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the God of all comfort, the Father of compassion, who has comforted us so that we may comfort others. And I look at that and go, I don't know why. Here's what I do know. I've been given the opportunity to comfort people, men who've gone through hell on earth, through abuse. I know God's redeemed that pain. I know that God's allowed me the opportunity to be a comfort to others. But that only came on the other side of doing the work to scar it over.
Wow.
It's still a scar. It will always be a scar, but it's not a wound anymore. And I would just encourage anybody listening, whatever the thing is that hurt, it can become a scar. It doesn't always have to be a wound.
And I think with God's help, we can find community, we can find counseling, we can find people that are going to help us process all the nitty-gritty, gross emotions, painful emotions. God's not... I have this vision, I don't know why, I always have this vision of when my kiddos were really little and they would have an emotional, they were really upset. Like if they were really, really upset and they'd kick and scream.
A meltdown.
Yeah, like a full-blown kiddo meltdown.
I saw one of those this morning.
They're fun to watch.
I have fewer of those now that the kiddos are older. But when they were in the midst of in the moment, they were truly upset about whatever it was. And they were kicking and screaming, and sometimes I would hold them while they were kicking and screaming. And it was like I didn't get mad. I loved them through it all. Like, yeah, like, and I was there holding them, as they were, having their freak out, It also it helps me understand, like, God is also part of our healing. So, like, finding the people like Joanna was talking about. What would you recommend if someone doesn't have that? What do they look for?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do they look for to find that person that you called? That they're like, maybe they've done a good job of acknowledging, they're dealing with their emotions, but they don't have that person or persons or even a counselor. And we'll put some things in the show notes for finding a counseling resource. But Joanna, what would you say to a person that hasn't found their people?
Yeah. So I would say that sounds really hard, and that's not, that probably just breaks my heart. Maybe you said that even earlier, Jason, that, so I would want them to find them. And so I think a couple of ways to
who do you look for? What are the characteristics of someone to come beside you are?
Well, yeah, I think it's someone who maybe experienced something, or maybe someone who has a strong faith, maybe someone who's a little farther ahead than you, maybe someone who you've seen work through hard things. Maybe it's not the same hard thing.
Good.
But I think what's more, or maybe even more of what you're asking, is how do you even start that conversation?
Oh, that's good.
That to me is like, I think you kind of have that like list of maybe that conjures up like a couple of people. And so maybe you don't have those people even in your like core inner circle. Maybe it's a little farther out in kind of that middle. Some of that I just think takes like courage to say, hey, and I've done this in various points of just life where it's just like, hey, this might be really weird, but can I just like process something that I'm going through with you? And I think then kind of even validating why, like, hey, I saw you go through this thing. I'd love to learn from it. Hey, this might be like really vulnerable of you to ask. And so you might even say no, but I hope you don't. And so I think some of that, like, I actually think just asking the person that you're thinking about is just the hardest thing in the whole, like, kind of part of it.
And I guarantee you there's people listening right now, if they're sticking with us here, God's bringing someone in your mind. There's a name. There's a face. That's listen to the Holy Spirit too, because sometimes it's they've thrust someone into your life for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's talk about, so we've acknowledged, we found people that can help us, but let's talk about forgiveness. Because I think that one of the most painful and heaviest parts of healing from emotional pain is forgiveness. And I think it takes a great deal of heavy lifting. And so I want to kind of talk about that. Why is forgiveness important for emotional healing? Because there's some people out there that are just angry that I'm even bringing it up, because it's like, I'm not going to forgive them. And it's like, okay, but why is forgiving important? And this is to whatever. It might be forgiving yourself. It might be forgiving someone that hurt you. Might be forgiving the situation. But there's a lot of avenues of forgiveness.
Well, I think it's important because when we choose not to forgive, we just get stuck. I always kind of like it. We get stuck in the moment or the thing that hurt us. We can't really, it's hard to move past it. You guys remember CDs? Those people don't have those anymore.
I'm too young.
But you remember that? But the CDs, I don't know if you guys remember that, but they would get a scratch on them.
Yeah.
And you would hear the same note.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 you know what I mean? And that's when you choose to forget, when you choose not to forgive someone, you stay stuck in the same note.
Mm-hmm.
That is the hurt that they caused you. And you're the one who's stuck. Here's what's crazy. They've moved on. They've moved on. Yeah. Sometimes they don't even know they did anything, but let's say that they did. I remember when I was in college, and it was graduation ceremony. It was like practice, rehearsal. Okay. And we were getting ready for it. And I had just 2 weeks before that gotten a letter from the state that the person who did the abuse to me, where he had gone to prison. And this was 7.5 years later, I think, after trial and all that. And so he served, I think he got 20 years or something like that sentence. He served 7.5. And I got a letter from that state saying, just so you know, he's getting out of prison. I think they were required to inform me or something like that. Anyways, so that kind of messed with me. Wow. That brought up a bunch of stuff. And by the way, that's another principle of healing is just because you've worked through it, there may be something else that happens in your life that you got to deal with it again. You got to address it. Anyways, that brought up stuff. So I was at that rehearsal, graduation rehearsal, and I looked out and I thought I saw him in the crowd. And so I froze up and I went to the bathroom, and there was my bathroom moment.
I was gonna say it's always the bathroom.
It's always the bathroom. You always run into the bathroom.
Safe place.
Yeah. But I kind of at one point though, I was in the bathroom for like 6-7 minutes. And then I was like, what am I doing here? Why am I locked up in this bathroom? I don't even know if that's him. So I kind of got up the courage and I walked straight up to the guy, and it wasn't him, of course. But here's the point. See, he's moved on. I don't know what he was doing that day, but I was in the bathroom locked up. And that's what happens when we hold on. We refuse to let the person go. We refuse to let them off the hook for what they did to us. We get stuck in the bathroom, stuck in the same note, and they're on a beach somewhere. They're fine. We're the ones who are suffering from it. And so you ask the fundamental question, like, why? That ultimately is one reason. Second reason, if you are a follower of Jesus, so look, if you're listening to this and you're not a follower of Jesus, I certainly have no authority in your life. Jesus you haven't given Jesus authority in your life. So take it for whatever you want. But if you are a follower of Jesus, you don't get to pick and choose what being a follower of Jesus means. And he told us at one point, to forgive as I have forgiven you. Okay. So I believe that all my sins have been all the debt that I owe God. And it's a ton, it's unfathomable, has been forgiven through the grace and the work of Jesus Christ on the cross. So for me then to withhold that from anyone, and we'll talk about what forgiveness looks like, probably we should talk about what that means in a minute. But that's what's the word? Making light of what I've been given. So it's almost like, how can I receive it and I refuse to even think about giving it to someone else? So the more you get in touch with how much grace and forgiveness you need in your life, I don't want to say easier. I hesitate saying easier, but the more viable forgiving someone else becomes. At the end of the day, man, all sin is like separated us from God. So anyways,
that's Jason. And I think that I love it. I don't know why this visual came to me, but it's almost like when we don't forgive someone, it's like we chain ourselves to them.
Yeah, they're
in a very metaphorical way. We actually chain ourselves to this person, to that damage, to the whatever it is, and forgiveness is actually setting ourselves free. But I think there's a lot of people that have some misconceptions about forgiveness. They assign what forgiveness must be, should be, and they're not saying no to forgiveness. They're saying no to things that is not a part of forgiveness.
Yeah.
They say things like, I can't forgive them. I can never look at that person again.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
But yeah, sometimes I think we confuse like forgiveness with reconciliation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what are some misconceptions you guys have heard about with forgiveness that is probably stopping people from experiencing the freedom of forgiveness?
Well, I'd say it 3 ways. Forgiveness is not these 3 things. So when the scriptures talk about forgiveness, when we talk, I mean, I think in this conversation we're talking about forgiveness. This is what we're not what we're talking about. Forgiveness is not once and done. So sometimes people say forgive and forget. I'm never forgetting what happened to me. So that's ridiculous. I shouldn't forget, by the way, what happened to me. Like, that'd be silly. So it's not once and done. It's not forgive and forget. So you can forgive someone and still very much remember what they did to you. And so that's one thing. Second thing is forgiveness is a process. So you may forgive someone today, and then a week later, you find yourself just as angry and all that. That doesn't mean you didn't forgive them a week before. That means you're normal, and it's come back up again. And so I've had to, multiple seasons of my life, when I first had kids, I had to forgive all over again because I had all this fear start kind of, when my kids hit teenage years, I had to forgive all over again. When Jenny and I got married and, we wrestled through the intimacy, I had to forgive all over again. So that doesn't mean I didn't forgive him before that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a process. That's okay. And give yourself grace with that. And secondly, and the last thing is, Joanna, you hit this. Forgiveness is not reconciliation. Those are 2 different things, 2 totally different topics. You can forgiveness is we should define what forgiveness is here probably in a second too, but forgiveness is fundamentally a posture of your heart. Reconciliation is when you restore the relationship. You can forgive someone without having the relationship restored. Some people are toxic. Some people are destructive, and you should not be reconciled to them. Doesn't mean you don't forgive them. So forgiveness is, here's what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is when there's a debt owed to you and you choose to absorb the debt. That's what forgiveness is, which is why forgiveness is painful. So it could be really simple. Someone broke your trust. Okay? They owe you for that. So there's a debt owed to you now. So forgiveness is you saying, I absorb that debt. I'm not going to be the one to go and have to make them pay me back, which half the time is impossible. How does someone...
They can't give you back what has been taken.
They can't give that back to you half the time. How could he ever give me back what was taken? Yeah. So forgiveness is anytime someone takes something from you, whether that's they took your parking spot at the mall, or they took your trust, or they took your time and wasted it, or they took whatever. It's when they're taking something and there's a debt owed now. And you choose to absorb the debt that's owed. That's what it fundamentally is. That's why forgiveness is painful.
Wow.
But you let that go. Last things, forgiveness is not, how do I say this one? Forgiveness is not letting them off the hook to face the consequences of what they did. See, we face this one big time with our church, because we press charges. We had some people, really warped people, say, well, if you forgave them, you wouldn't press charges.
This was the church you grew up in.
Yeah, this is the church I was at. It's like, whoa, you don't understand forgiveness. That's justice.
Mm.
And that's a totally different thing. I can forgive him. I choose not to. I will absorb. He can never pay me back for those years that he took and the trust and all that kind of stuff. But he needs to face the consequences of his actions through the injustice that was done. That's a totally different thing.
Yeah. So
you can pursue justice while having a heart that said, I'm not going to be the one to make them pay for that.
Can you forgive someone far away? Like, can you forgive someone without contact with them?
Well, we have to, because some people did stuff to us and they're passed away now. So how do you move forward with that? Well, the way you move forward with that is, again, you go, God, they owe me for what they did to me. It's wrong. By the way, forgiveness in and of itself is calling out something as evil and wrong, right? Because sometimes people are like, well, if I forgive, I'm not letting them face what they did. It's like, that's not, no. Forgiveness, the very nature of forgiveness, because how else can you forgive someone that you haven't said what you did was evil and wrong and bad? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the very act is itself an act of justice, because you're saying that was unacceptable. So you call that out by saying, I have to forgive the person who wronged me, and I absorb the debt that they owed. I let them off of that, and I allow you, Jesus. You're the one who can take care of the justice stuff.
Because I think if everyone hearing, forgiveness is the gift we give ourselves in a many very real ways. It's freeing ourselves. It's freeing ourselves from having that owed to us, or the harm that was done to us. And I love that it's if it's a parent that hurt you, if it's someone from your past or someone currently, it's not condoning, and it's not celebrating the relationship, and it's not restoring the relationship in many situations, but it is just, it's a mental, heart, spiritual thing that doesn't have to require you seeing the person ever again.
It might, but it doesn't have to. That's between you and God, of like, I mean, because again, so if Jenny says something that I interpret as harsh, it's like, well, no, that you need to be reconciled. like there's levels. So I want to make sure that we don't, because I might be holding that against her now, and I just made that up, but I'm just saying, like, I could be holding that against her now. I need to be reconciled.
And it's also about like,
I'm talking about harm. I'm talking about harm.
Because I also think forgiveness is like, sometimes I like to look at forgiveness as like lifting 1,000 pounds, or put it more realistic perspective, like lifting 300 pounds. I can't lift 300 pounds.
It's just as unrealistic for me.
You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't lift 300 pounds, but I could lift 20. And I could maybe, in a year, lift more and lift more and lift more. And maybe someday, with a lot of lifting, I could lift 300 or close to 300. And I think that for a lot of people, forgiveness is like telling them lift 300 pounds, and the expectation is, well, I can't. It's like, no, you can't, but you can lift a little. And then maybe tomorrow you can lift a little more, and then you'll lift less the next day because something happens and you're healing. But like, you'll never lift 300 pounds by not trying to lift anything. And it takes a time. And maybe someday you fully forgive this person, but it doesn't happen right away.
And I think God honors that. God knows, man, he knows our pain so much more deeply than we even do. And I think God honors, he sees your heart. Even if you're like, hey, God, the only thing I can muster today is I don't want to go hit them with my car right now. It's like, okay, that's a step.
Yeah.
Like, I see that.
So now that we're starting to forgive, and I think there's some next level forgiveness too. I mean, like, I think we could spend all day talking about forgiveness, and I think we are going to do a podcast on grace and forgiveness at some point, because we're going to have to get into at some point, hurting people hurt people. And there sometimes, like, the hurt is cyclical, and it just keeps going until someone forgives, and we could go into that. But so how can we turn the emotional pain that we experience as humans, like, how can we turn our emotional pain into something that makes us a productive person or bring purpose? So the name of this episode is finding purpose in pain. So how can we begin the slow process of finding purpose in our pain? Now, this is next level stuff. So like, if you're at the beginning of the podcast and you're still at the acknowledging, I'm not expecting you to get to this place, but how do we find purpose in pain? And how can, like, put it another way, how can emotional pain be a catalyst for personal growth and transformation?
Yeah, so I think honestly, even out of some of the pages I like read in my journal earlier, like that is that process to move from being in the thick of it to being kind of in the post or like the like aftermath of it.
Yes.
And so for me, real practically, like God just started to show different ways that he was bringing purpose to those moments. So whether that was through conversations with other people that were going through something similar, to me, that felt like a way to, I don't want to say use, but like a way to kind of use that pain to give it purpose in conversation and in story and kind of sharing my story with others. And so I think that might happen right out of the gate. You might not, or you might not also see those moments for like years to come. Like I think that some of that is just really situational and how you process that kind of in the aftermath of some of that.
Oh, that's good.
I was just reading Romans 5. I actually pulled it up just to make sure I had it right, but Romans 5, Paul, and this is a guy who knew he knew everything there was to know about suffering. Been thrown in jail, been beaten. I mean, he knew suffering. But so this Paul, the same guy, says, we rejoice in our sufferings. It's kind of a crazy idea. Knowing, and here's why though, knowing that suffering produces endurance, endurance produces character, character produces hope, and hope does not put us to shame because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who's been given to us. And I just look at it and I go, if you can keep that's what God can do with suffering. That's what God can do with your pain. He can build something in you that could not be built any other way. He can build a strength and endurance. Actually, what Paul says, a hope that can be built through it, that can be strengthened and that you can't experience. Do you know how? So I speak differently today because of what happened to me, because I had to learn how to read the room like crazy when I was 10 years old to make sure that his emotions were like I was in. Well, do you know how that serves me today to be able to speak? I can tell, and this is just me. I'm not saying I'm good. I'm just trying to say like that serves me today. That pain has been, everybody's pain has a side to it that can be used for, God can use it for his good purposes. And that's where it's like, that's where you start to find hope in it. That's where your character is strengthened.
You know, I think there's something that ties us closer to God when we repurpose pain, because our entire Christian story is repurposed pain. Jesus experienced horror on the cross, like horror. And out of it came grace and salvation. And when we can learn to repurpose our pain, God can bring beauty in this world because of it. He can bring beauty out of ash. And I don't know why it reminds me of this passage in Genesis. It's Genesis 50 where Joseph, who has gone through a lifetime of horrific pain and loss and abuse, he meets the perpetrators, his brothers, who started the whole thing. And he says, what you had intended for evil, God was able to use for good. God intended to use for good. And so I think that there's something connects us with God when we can say, God, what do you want to use even this? And it's like we open our hands to even our pain and go, how can you use this? And it's like, and that's hard. That's hard to open our hands to the pain and say, how can you use a miscarriage? How can you use the loss of a child? How can you use an abuse? How can you use rejection or whatever it might be? How can you use it, God?
Yeah, and I think too with that, like, and then how it continues to write the story that he has for you and how that unfolds. I mean, like our kids, like Finn, knows enough about our story in like ways that he can as a 7-year-old that like he's asked questions like, Mom, like, why didn't we get to have those 2 babies? And it's like, I don't know, but I think what I do know is that we likely wouldn't have Junia today because our goal wasn't really to have 4 kids in our house. And so I don't know, like, I think sometimes too, just to acknowledge that, like, I think that pain is part of God's story for our lives, but not to get so honed in on like the like micro story, that there's like the kind of zoomed out macro story that in the moment it feels like this is the only kind of window, but there's so much more to like the bigger picture.
I think you also become a tour guide. Like, I think when we experience pain and we navigate, God navigates us through it, I think he expects us to guide others. And it's like suddenly, Joanna, you become the person that rushes to the bathroom for that person. And Jason, I know that there's so many people that have heard your story over the years, and your vulnerability of sharing your story has always been a marvel to me. But there's so many young men, young women that look at your story and go, I can start the journey of healing because I see someone has made it through at least a good chunk of the path.
Yeah. Still on the journey, but that's the power. That's what sharing your story, that's what taking the Band-Aid off so that people can see your scars. That's what it unlocks. And then you said, again, that's 2 Corinthians 1:3-4. You've been given the compassion so that you can give compassion and comfort to others.
Wow.
But you've got to heal from it, and you got to acknowledge it. You got to do all the things we've been talking about. But it can scar. It will scar. It can scar. It feels like a wound right now, and it is, but it can scar. And then you got a story.
Wow. And I hope everyone listening, that it doesn't matter where you're on the journey. Okay. So if you're at I haven't acknowledged I've been hurt, or if you're at the place where you got to name that hurt, or if you're at the place where you got to find some answer, you've got to figure out a way to express your emotions in a healthy way, or you got to express your emotions to God, or find community, or even learn to forgive. Wherever you are on this journey, or maybe, just maybe, you're getting to that close to that part of the story where it's time to find some purpose in the pain. Wherever it is, God is right there with you. Whatever part of that journey you are on, our loving Savior is with you, weeping with you, holding you, laughing with you, whatever is in the moment, he is there with you. And this is why I can't imagine living in this world without being changed, because I cannot imagine doing this without him. So make sure you like, subscribe, make sure you check us out as we drop each of our new episodes. We'll leave all these things available in the show notes. And just as a reminder to all of you, like, now that you're life changed by Christ, live changed.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to follow the show, send today's episode to a friend, and leave a review. The Live Changed podcast is produced by LCBC Church. LCBC stands for Lives Changed by Christ. We are one church in multiple locations across Pennsylvania. For more information about LCBC, resources from this episode, and ways to grow in your relationship with Jesus, go to lcbcchurch.com.